Okay, just for the record, Stan saw this movie without me, and then I just saw the movie now. So we're in kind of an interesting position where I don't know how he felt about the film, and he doesn't know how I felt about the film.
Right, exactly.
So I'll go first, I guess.
Yeah, no,
and then
please,
you can go.
Please do. I can't wait to hear what you thought about this.
Okay. Well, I literally just saw it, so
Yes.
not everything has had really a chance to settle.
Right.
Like, literally, I just got out of it and just came here.
Right.
But just for initial impressions, very, very good. It wasn't perfect, and there are a couple of things that I had a kind of an issue with, and a couple of things that I'm still a little confused about. But overall, that is an excellent example of a good use of money, which they had very little of.
Good point.
And
very good point.
Resources, which they had very little of. I'm astounded. I can't remember the exact figure, but this film had practically no money.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine what the returns must have been, considering what a success this is.
Yeah.
This is, or at least it started out as, really just a look of how human beings treat certain classes of people.
Yes.
And that was done very well, and in a way that surprisingly was not manipulative. Because the person, the initial main character,
yes.
The person who has the job of going in and
right.
dealing with the aliens, the reason I say it wasn't manipulative is because it would have been manipulative if he was a complete son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Because then it would have been, well, see, now how do you like it? But his job, what he was doing wasn't exactly good, but it was just his job, and he didn't have all the information. He didn't really know, nor did he care.
Right.
It never occurred to him how the aliens were living.
Yes.
And how they're being treated. And I think he was a little bit surprised by what he saw when the military went in and started dealing with them their way. And then
I don't think he was surprised, but go ahead.
No, he was surprised. No, there were two reaction shots of him where he was just kind of dumbfounded by what he saw. But I think the point they were trying to make was he couldn't really say anything about it because they were on camera.
Right.
So there was a look of surprise when they were dealing with the aliens as harshly as they were.
Right.
So that was the I'm talking about the first.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Very good.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
The second part, where, and this is a typical of all of my general reviews, but just to let you know, this is a spoiler alert. We're going to talk about the whole movie here.
Yes.
So go see it yourself if you haven't yet, and then come back and listen. But in the second part, where he starts transforming into one of them, I was horrified throughout, as well I should be, throughout the whole thing. That was the most effective, one of the most effective performances I have ever seen. This guy was terrified.
Yes, he was.
And throughout the whole of the film, he was not a brave man.
No.
And he was not ready for this.
You're
and he wasn't
absolutely
expecting this.
Yeah.
And the fact that the second that they found that arm on him, he stopped being a person.
Yes.
And he was an instrument.
Yes.
And they weren't even, I think as the line said at the end of the film, they weren't even trying to hide the fact that he was an instrument. So that terrified me on a very human level. I'm trying to compare it to something else that worked just as well, but it might have been the most effective thing of that sort that maybe I've seen. Really excellent, and that guy was great. I don't know who. I think he might have been an unknown before this. I'm not entirely sure, but he was great in that movie. The last half of the film, where they're trying to get back to the mothership, that's the only part of the film that kind of lost me. It wasn't bad. It was just kind of it went the way of the routine.
It turned into a science fiction action picture.
It did, and it's only a little bit unfortunate because the rest of the film was so good. And to be perfectly honest, I was kind of worn out by the ending. It was just shoot 'em up.
I was too, and I think audiences were kind of expecting that. This is a science fiction alien picture. You sort of need to see the technology.
I think somebody eventually said, we can't do documentary the whole time. We're going to have to do something.
I think that was unfortunate because my take on the film...
one last thing?
Sure,
just one last thing.
Sure thing.
Gattaca was great.
Oh, yeah.
And it got no business because it was straight through, no action, just a human picture. And I think maybe somebody was thinking about Gattaca during the writing process of this film, and I think that explains
And said, we needed some action.
Yeah, I think that explains the last half.
And it's funny, I was thinking about Gattaca when I saw this the first time, and I was really thinking about Starship Troopers.
I didn't think about Starship Troopers at all during
I'll tell you why I thought of it. And I'll tell you what I thought of the picture, and sort of mix those two together. I liked it. If anybody asked me, should I see District 9? Well, I enjoy this film, I would say yes. There's no possible way that anybody could say that this was a bad film or an unenjoyable film.
Yeah.
When it became about the main human character and the main alien character, in my opinion, it became a smaller film than it needed to be. And it became a smaller film than it should have been. There was a real potential here to make this a big statement about race relations and the way that minorities are treated and the way that, like you said, second-class citizens are treated. They dealt with that to an extent, but when it became about two characters rather than the overall population of District 9, I think the movie diminished a little bit from in that sense. Just to really quick go over the things that I really liked about it, the main character was great.
Yeah.
He was not your typical movie anything. He didn't look like a hero. He didn't particularly act like a hero. He got kind of swept up in this. I really liked... I was very sympathetic to him, and I was very sympathetic to the main alien character and his son. Although I thought him having his son being involved in this was a little bit manipulative.
That was
just a little
only
bit.
Part of the film where I thought they were deliberately trying to make us sympathetic towards him. I liked his son, and I liked what they did with him. I didn't mind.
No, me neither. I just thought, I just thought that was just one more little thing they added in order to get us to care. But I cared anyway.
Yeah.
But like I said, and I'll go ahead and tell me what you think about this. I think this was, like I said, a picture that was smaller in scope when it came to the subject of race relations and discrimination than it could have been if they'd opened it up a little bit to more characters.
I'll say this. If I was a screenwriter, I wouldn't know how to make this about the whole population for the entire length of time. If I was a screenwriter, I would do that until I felt I couldn't do it anymore, and then I would focus on
you know what? I thought they did a good job of that in the beginning, and I thought there was a way they could have continued that.
How?
Well, you keep doing what you were doing in the beginning. You simply make it, you make it sort of an exodus. You sort of show them evicting them from District 9 and moving them presumably into District 10, and you have a couple of different characters trying to stop this. It really stopped being about the eviction, and it started being more about this guy trying to fix himself and the alien character trying to get to the mothership.
Yes,
and I realize that's an analogy or an allegory in itself, but I thought it was smaller than if it had been about the whole thing and the whole issue itself.
I didn't think that what the human character was going through was small. Because
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the overall story. No, what he was going through was gut-wrenching. Yeah. It was very, very moving. It drew me in. I'm not saying that.
I think that it would have been far more difficult and far less engaging to be focused on the eviction rather than this person coming into this world. And this kind of ties in with one of the things that I did think was a little bit diminished in the end. This guy coming in and actually finding out how the other side lives, actually figuring out how the other side has to live, because he now has to live that way too. You couldn't do that if you were telling an eviction story.
No, you couldn't do that, but you could. But see, I think that too, and I don't mean to diminish that story because it was done and told very well, but I think I think that story, as opposed to the one I'm talking about, was a little bit smaller. Not bad, just a little smaller.
I don't think it's bigger or smaller. I think it's just different. But I think we shouldn't focus on what the movie could have been.
Sure. Well, let me make one more point about that, and that's when I was thinking about Starship Troopers. That was, we were watching all of this propaganda about the humans. And the bugs, you rarely saw them, and when you did, they were just these creatures. But in the back of our minds, we were saying, this is terrible. I shouldn't be rooting. These are awful people. These are vacuous people. The whole thing was a satire, essentially. If they had gone that route, I think it would have been bigger. Not necessarily better,
it would have been
but a little bit bigger in scope.
I don't think it would have been bigger. What Starship Troopers was doing was indirect in a very clever way, because they never said ever in that film what those people were doing were wrong.
Exactly.
But we knew they were wrong. This film is saying this is wrong.
Yes.
So they're taking the direct approach, and I liked that approach. Moving on to the things that I didn't think were perfect and the things that I didn't quite understand. I had a hard time understanding exactly what it was that was transforming this guy, because I guess it was their starship fuel.
Yes.
But how that was going to...
It went through my mind. It'll do one of two things, and you've said this about other things in the past, and their ship fuel apparently will do one of two things. It'll either power their ship, or it'll turn a human being into one of them, and that bothered me too a little bit.
It's small, compared to
and it was also necessary to tell the bigger story.
Yeah, and I guess they could have spent 20 minutes coming up with a convoluted technobabble explanation,
or just that, and we can deal with it.
But still, I was a little confused about that. I thought what was going on is that I thought what are they called? What was the slang term for them?
Prawns.
I thought the prawns were working with the criminal element to make this stuff is so that the criminal element could use their weapons. I thought maybe this was sort of I thought it was...
that never even occurred to me.
Thing
I never thought about that.
And then it turns out that it's really just the starship fuel.
Right.
So that kind of made me a little confused. And a couple more things that I'll go into before we finish. Another thing that confused me, and this part can probably be remedied by me watching the movie again, but did they fully explain why they weren't letting the aliens leave?
Yes.
They did.
Oh, are you kidding?
I must have missed it.
Okay, just the fact that they had this alien research facility where they were mangling these aliens... And use... Boy, I don't even like calling them prawns because that's a derogatory term in the movie. Yeah. That was done well.
It was.
But just the fact that they were using these aliens to harvest their body parts to figure out how their weapons work, that's why they were keeping them there.
I can understand why they would keep... some of them there, because they can keep some of them there and let some of them leave. But just, I suppose if they let them leave, they might come back with reinforcements.
That might have been part of it. When the entire population is there and all their equipment is there, they have an inexhaustible well of... I
also didn't understand why, if it was so easy for two of them to storm that facility, why didn't the prawns just do this in the first place? I actually... that question may answer itself, though, because I did think it was interesting how they didn't seem to know how their own weapons worked very well.
Some of them didn't.
And the humans didn't either, so they were both kind of on the same
Now, see, I was assuming... I assumed in the movie... I had a problem the first time I saw this, not the second time just now when we watched it. But the first time, I didn't understand why this one alien could pilot the mothership, but none of the other ones could. How did they get stuck there in the first place? There was a little scene at the beginning where it said it needed the command module, and the command module fell out of the sky.
Yeah.
So apparently, the main alien character in this was one of either the pilots or maybe the commander or something. He knew how to get this stuff done.
And nobody else did.
Right, exactly.
Well, the thing is, I think... The things that I was first confused about, I really just need to go back and watch it again, because you get a lot of information in the beginning, but what this movie is ultimately about really got my attention, so much so that I don't think I was really quite following all the little details, but I think they'll fill themselves in the next time that I watch it.
Well, they will, I think you'll enjoy it even more the second time, and isn't that a high compliment for a movie if you enjoy it the second time?
Yeah. But the ending... really did kind of fall into the routine, and while I've said a couple of times I understand why it was done,
it's what another prominent film critic called the Rambo ending, and I think that was sort of them playing it safe, because they knew this was a science fiction picture. It had a lot of CGI special effects, and we sort of needed an action ending. But even in the ending, when the alien said, he said, "I'll come back in 3 years, I promise." we sort of got to learn something about the alien's character, or at least that one.
Yeah, and we like him a lot.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to say that could have been done a little bit better is that the main human character, understandably, because the alien says, "I'm leaving without you. I'll come back in 3 years."
Right.
The human character freaks out and hits him with something and tries to leave himself.
Yes.
Then just a few minutes later, he says, "Go to your son and go home. Just come back for me 3 years later." I think they could have done a better job of saying, "Now I understand you, and now I like you, and now I understand why you want your son to
That's
leave."
implied in his actions, but I understand what you're saying. It could have been a little bit more
just
direct.
A little bit better.
I agree with you there.
Overall, though, for all the science fiction crap that is made, just for the sake of entertainment, somebody making a film like this with an actual purpose, with no money, is impressive in and of itself.
This was probably the best science fiction picture I've seen, I don't know, in a long time.
Yeah, certainly one of the most interesting
and original.
Yes. Yeah.
I strongly recommend.
Yeah,
District
very
9.
good. Not perfect, but very good.
Yes.
Alrighty.